A kiss meant to break the curse, but what if it created another? Once upon a time, you've heard the tale of the Frog Prince, a spoiled princess, a golden ball, and a kiss that turned a frog back into a man. But fairy tales are tricksters. They hide secrets in the shadows. So let me ask you this. What if the kiss did not free the frog? What if the curse leapt the other way and the princess herself began to change? Skin rippling green, voice breaking into a croak. Imagine the royal halls echoing not with cheers, but with the sound of two frogs staring at each other. This is not the story you were told. What if the princess became a frog too? It began in the palace garden, where marble statues guarded the roses. The princess strolled alone, tossing her golden ball into the air, catching it with practiced ease. She adored it more than she adored people, for it never argued, never asked her to change. She laughed at her reflection in the sphere's gleam, imagining she was the brightest jewel of all. Then, splash, it slipped from her fingers and vanished into the dark water of the well. Panic struck her face. She cried out, stomping her delicate shoes against the grass, shouting for help. But no servant was near enough, and as her sobs echoed, a voice rose from below, low, wet, croaking. "Why weep so bitterly, princess?" She gasped as the frog climbed into the light, its skin glistening, its eyes wide and patient. "I can bring back your golden toy," it said, "if you will let me be your companion." Her tears ceased instantly. "Yes, yes, anything," she exclaimed. The frog studied her carefully, then spoke again. "Not just today. You must let me eat from your plate, drink from your cup, and rest upon your pillow. A friend indeed, not just in word." The princess, eager to reclaim her ball, waved her hand impatiently. Of course, whatever you wish, just fetch it now." Her voice was sharp, betraying her lack of sincerity. Yet the frog did not argue. With a sudden dive, it plunged into the well. Moments later, it returned, ball clamped between its jaws. The princess seized it with delight, twirling with joy. But her gratitude lasted no longer than a heartbeat. "Goodbye, little frog," she laughed, rushing back to the palace. Behind her, a small voice called, "Remember your promise." But she did not look back. The marble gate swallowed her, and the frog was left alone at the edge of the well. The frog sat at the well's edge, watching the marble gates close. He knew her promise was false, yet still his heart clung to hope. That night, in the castle's golden hall, the princess twirled her ball once more, laughing as though nothing had happened. But when silence fell and the moonlight spilled across her chamber, there came a sound. Knock, knock, croak. She froze. The servants opened the door, and there he was, small, damp, unyielding. "Princess," the frog croaked, "you gave me your word." She turned pale. "Send it away," she cried. But the king entered, frowning. "Daughter, if you have spoken a promise, you must keep it. Honor binds royalty more than jewels." Shamed, the princess lowered her eyes. She had no choice but to let the frog in. The banquet that night was filled with roasted meats, steaming bread, and crystal goblets of wine. The princess lifted her fork, only to hear the wet sound of feet on stone. Plop, plop, plop. The frog hopped onto the table, settling beside her plate. Gasps rose from the courtiers. She turned crimson. "This is disgraceful," she whispered. Yet the frog only dipped his tongue into her wine, tasting it solemnly, as if it were a holy pact. The king's eyes were stern. "He is your guest," he reminded her. And so she endured it, the frog eating from her plate, drinking from her cup. At night, when she fled to her bed, he followed still, asking, "May I rest by your pillow, princess?" She nearly screamed. But again, the king's command weighed heavier than her disgust. Days passed. At first she despised him, his damp skin, his croaking voice, his persistence. Yet when the halls grew quiet and no one else listened, it was the frog who told her stories. Of the stars mirrored in ponds, of fireflies weaving light in the rushes, of storms that bent trees but spared the reeds. She found herself listening, even smiling. One evening, as she pushed her plate toward him without being asked, the courtiers exchanged glances. The princess had softened. She did not notice. She only heard his voice, steady and strange, and for the first time wondered, perhaps he is more than what he seems. It happened by the fountain, under the evening sky. The frog had spoken of friendship, of keeping promises, of how even small creatures carried worth. The princess stared at him, her heart heavier than she expected. "You wanted a companion," she whispered. "Then, so be it." She bent low, touched her lips to his cold, damp skin. For an instant, magic pulsed. She closed her eyes, imagining a prince unfolding before her. She thought a kiss would turn the frog into a prince, but instead it cursed her. At the fountain, beneath the evening sky, the frog spoke of friendship, of promises kept. The princess's heart softened. "You wanted a companion," she whispered. "Then so be it." She bent low, pressing her lips to his cold, damp skin. Magic surged. She closed her eyes, dreaming of a prince unfolding before her. But when she opened them, the frog remained the same. Instead, her own hands shrank. Her skin rippled green. Her voice cracked into a croak. The princess had become a frog, a kick the curse. Instead, it created another. Screams rippled through the corridors. Servants fled, guards crossed their spears, and the royal advisors argued in tight, frightened circles. On the pillar of the great hall, the torchlight jittered. Two small shapes cast long shadows. The princess, now a frog, tried to speak, but only a raw croak escaped. The king approached, crown heavy with disbelief. He looked from the unchanging frog prince to his transformed daughter. The weight of duty pressed deeper than sorrow. "Find the court magus," someone cried. "Summon the healers," cried another. But the magus, when he arrived, shook his head. "This is no common spell. It binds not to a kiss, but to intention." The magic turned toward the heart that moved. The king's hands trembled. The princess, shivering on the cold stone, glanced at the frog beside her. He did not retreat. He hopped closer, forming a shield with his small, damp body. An absurd, gentle bravery that hushed the hall louder than any command. Night gathered at the windows like ink. The princess, still dazed, crouched near the hearth to steal a little warmth. The frog prince settled beside her. No accusations passed between them. "I meant to free you," she rasped. "If I trapped myself instead, I will not ask you to fix it." The frog lifted his gaze. "Then let us hold what is ours to hold," he said. "We can choose the shape of our courage, even if we cannot choose our bodies." Silence followed. Deep, human silence, though they were not human. Finally, the princess turned to the king. With a bow as best a frog could muster, she croaked, "Father, forgive me. I must leave until I learn who I am in this skin." The king's eyes softened. He placed the crown's weight aside and knelt to the stone. "Daughter," he whispered, "honor is not the opposite of love. Go and come back whole." The gates opened to the night, to reeds and moon-silvered paths. They traveled by moonlight, leaving marble for mud, trumpets for crickets. The swamp accepted them without question. Mist rose like breath from sleeping water. Reeds clicked. Frogs chorused. The princess's first steps were clumsy. She leapt too far, misjudged the softness of moss, sank with a startled squeak. The frog prince laughed, not unkindly, and showed her how to crouch, how to spring, how to read the tremble of water for danger. "The castle teaches walls," he said. "The swamp teaches listening." They built a shelter of leaves and broad lily pads, a small dome where the rain drummed a steady lullaby. At the water's edge, beneath a sky bright with unfamiliar stars, the princess practiced the smallness of being. Small hunger, small shelter, small voice, and found that none of it made her heart smaller. When she slept, she dreamed not of lost gold, but of the soft percussion of rain and the patient light of fireflies mending the dark. Days arranged themselves into a rhythm. Dawn swims, noon stillness, twilight hunts. She learned the silver arc of a dragonfly's path, the shadow fall that meant a heron waited, the bright seam of current that would carry her home. They ate what the water gave, they rested when the wind said rest. There were humiliations, yes, a tumble into muck, a seed caught in her throat, but also small triumphs, a perfect leap, a narrow escape, a shared laugh that felt as rich as feasts once did. Before sleep, the Frog Prince told stories of his childhood, of pride that had once been a shining shield, and how it turned to lead when misfortune struck. The princess did not offer pity, she offered presence. "Thank you for not fixing me," he said once. "Thank you for not asking me to," she replied. In that simple exchange, both found a dignity the palace had not taught. Sometimes memory bruised her, a corridor washed in sun, the silk hiss of a gown, a song learned at 6. She would fall quiet, watching the pond mirror the sky until the world steadied. The Frog Prince did not rush her past the ache. He placed himself where she could see him in the same pane of water. "The mirror is wide enough for both," he said. "You do not have to choose between the girl in silk and the frog in mud." In return, she asked about the day his curse began. He spoke not of witches, but of a dinner where he mocked a servant, of a hunt where he boasted louder than the drums. "If there was a spell," he said, "perhaps I cast it myself." She did not absolve him. She laid a leaf upon the water and sent it sailing. "Then let's learn new spells," she said, "the kind that unmake what pride has made." Kindness, once practiced, multiplied. They freed a fish from a snare of reeds. Days later, a school of minnows swam ahead of them during a flood, showing the shallow path. They righted a beetle flipped on its back. That night, fireflies crowned their shelter with soft constellations. The swamp, which had seemed a tangle of threats, revealed itself as a living covenant. Give and be given to. Wordless gratitude stitched them into the place. One afternoon, a child from the village wandered too close to the marsh. The princess guided her away with patient hops, while the Frog Prince sang a silly rhyme to keep her laughing. The child waved, cheeks bright with safety. "I never knew goodness could be this ordinary," the princess said. "Ordinary," the Frog Prince smiled, "is just another word for true." And ordinary day by ordinary day, the fear that they would be frogs forever loosened its hold, not because rescue was near, but because despair had no room where purpose was. One evening, the pond was a mirror of silver. Fireflies swayed like lanterns. The princess sat on a broad lily leaf, gazing at her reflection. No crown, no jewels, only round eyes and a body meant for mud. The Frog Prince joined her, his voice soft. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She did not answer at once. Then, "It used to, I think. I have shed a skin I never knew was heavy." She turned to him, her small hand touching his damp one. "If I must be a frog forever, I am glad it is with you." He smiled with the quiet strength of someone who had waited long. "Then the curse has no power left. Love already won." The moonlight rippled around them, not as blessing, not as spell, but as witness. But love is tested in storms, not in calm. Clouds gathered, a black tide across the sky. Thunder split the swamp. Rain hammered leaves flat. The pond swelled, spilling its banks, tearing nests from branches. The princess clung to a reed, trembling as the current tugged at her legs. The Frog Prince leapt ahead, shouting above the roar, "This way!" Together they fought to reach higher ground. But the swamp they had come to love turned wild, a beast unchained. They saw creatures swept away, friends they had helped now helpless. And still they pushed on, side by side, toward the heart of the storm. In the chaos, the princess slipped. The flood yanked her away, spinning her toward a whirlpool. She cried out, only bubbles answered. The Frog Prince dove without thought. Through water thick with branches, he reached her, clasping her wrist. The current battered them both, tearing, dragging. He wrapped himself around her, whispering though no one could hear, "Not without you." She felt his body straining, his strength breaking, and yet, clinging together, their hearts beat one rhythm, defiance against the flood. And then, the silence after fury. The water stilled, branches settled. In the hush, a warmth spread where their hands clung. Not a kiss this time, not a bargain, but a choice to hold on even when the world tore apart. Something cracked, the unseen chains of pride, of selfishness, of fear. The swamp shimmered, fireflies rose in swarms. The magic that once demanded a transaction now bowed to devotion freely given. They thought they would be frogs forever, until love itself broke the curse. Amid the raging storm, they clung to each other, choosing not to let go, even as the flood tore around them. And in that choice, something cracked, the chains of pride, fear, and selfishness. The swamp shimmered, fireflies lit the night. Green skin peeled away like mist. Two frogs became two figures, kneeling on the muddy bank. Not by a kiss, but by devotion freely given. This is how the curse truly ended, not with magic, but with love that endured. When they returned to the castle, trumpets blared, citizens cheered. Yet, they carried with them not jewels or triumphs, but the quiet certainty born of mud and storm. The king embraced them, no crown between. "You are changed," he said. The princess answered, "Yes. I learned love is not a spell to free one soul. It is the strength to bind two." The prince added, "And sometimes, only when we accept the curse together does it end." The tale that once ended with a kiss now ended with something greater. Understanding, sacrifice, a happiness rewritten. And if you listen on quiet nights, by ponds where fireflies dance, you may still hear them. Two voices, once frogs, now human, laughing as though the swamp were still